It started on a Wednesday that didn't mean anything. The kind of day that just drags: gray light, greasy rain on the windows, the sound of old ceiling fans trying their best. I'd been working at my uncle's auto repair shop for 6 months, mostly fixing engines, staying out of other people's lives. She walked in around 4. Not like she owned the place, more like she didn't need to prove that she didn't. My stepbrother had called earlier, said his mom's car was making that sound again. I didn't expect her to come alone. She'd been in and out of my life for years, always at some family event, always polite, distant, composed. I'd never thought about her much, at least not until that day when she stepped inside the shop, the smell of rain clinging to her hair. She wore a simple gray coat, damp at the shoulders, and held her keys like she wasn't sure she wanted to hand them over. "Hi," she said, a little too softly for the noise around us. "Hey," I said, wiping my hands on a rag that never really got clean. "He told me about the car." She nodded, eyes wandering over the place. The tools, the half-finished repairs, the radio murmuring old songs in the background. There was something about the way she stood there, not lost, but tired of being somewhere she didn't belong. When I reached out for her keys, our fingers brushed. It meant nothing. Or maybe it did, because neither of us moved right away. She gave a small laugh, the kind people make to break the air between them. "You've grown taller," she said. I didn't know how to answer that. Instead, I bent over the hood and started pretending I was inspecting the engine. From the corner of my eye, I saw her watching, not the car, but me. Not in a way that was obvious, more like she was trying to understand something about me she hadn't noticed before. I could feel it in the silence that hung between the sound of rain and the click of my tools. "You still living with your dad?" she asked after a while. "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Trying to save up, you know." She smiled, faintly, almost with pity, or maybe fondness. It was hard to tell. There was a time I used to think she looked cold, the kind of woman who didn't get flustered, who always had the right words ready. But standing there, close enough to see the fine lines near her eyes, I realized she wasn't cold at all. She was holding something back. The power flickered once, a quick blink of light that left the room dim for a moment. She looked up, startled, then laughed again quietly. "That happens a lot?" she asked. "Only when it rains," I said. "Or when the place wants to remind me I'm still here." That made her look at me differently, just for a second. A look that wasn't polite or familial or expected. Something softer, curious. And that was it, the moment that stuck. I finished checking the car, said she'd probably need to leave it overnight. She said she'd come back tomorrow. Simple, nothing unusual. But when she turned to leave, she stopped halfway, glanced back like she'd forgotten something. Maybe a question, maybe a thought, and then just smiled instead. The door shut behind her, and all I could hear was the sound of rain hitting the metal roof. I told myself it was nothing. But that look, the small, unguarded one she gave before walking away, stayed longer than I wanted it to. And for reasons I still can't explain, I caught myself hoping she'd come back before the car was fixed. She came back 2 days later, right before closing. The shop was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in the walls after a long day. Most of the guys had left. The air smelled like oil, rain, and coffee that had gone cold hours ago. I didn't expect her to show up that late, but when the door opened and the bell gave that tired jingle, I didn't need to look up to know it was her. "Still open?" she asked. "Barely," I said, half smiling. "You made it just in time." She smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was a faint redness there, maybe from lack of sleep, maybe from something else. She handed me a folder with some documents for the repair. Her hands trembled slightly when she did. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just long day," she murmured, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Work's been—" She stopped, searching for the word. "Heavy." I didn't press. She looked like she didn't want to be asked more. We stood there for a while, her on one side of the counter, me on the other, the space between us thick with everything we weren't saying. I started checking the car again, mostly to keep my hands busy. She followed me, her steps quiet, careful. When she leaned over beside me to look at the engine, I caught a faint scent of her perfume, clean, understated, with something warm underneath. "You still fix things the old way," she said, noticing my tools. I guess I trust my hands more than machines. She nodded slowly, watching the movement of my fingers as I tightened a loose bolt. Your father used to say that too, she said quietly. About trusting your hands. Something flickered in her voice. Memory, or maybe something heavier. I looked up, and for the first time, she wasn't composed. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused, like she was far away for a second. You miss him, I said before I could stop myself. She blinked, surprised, then gave a small, uneven laugh. Sometimes, she whispered. Sometimes more than I should. There was a pause after that, a fragile one. The kind where even breathing feels like too much. She tried to smile again, but her voice caught on the next sentence. You remind me of him when you talk like that. Serious. Always watching everything. I don't mean to, I said softly. I know. Her voice softened too. It's not a bad thing. The fluorescent light above us buzzed faintly. She reached for the hood to close it, her hand brushing against mine again. The same brief, electric mistake as before. Neither of us moved this time. Her fingers hesitated, lingered just long enough for the air to shift. Then she stepped back, almost too quickly, eyes darting to the floor. I should go, she said, her voice barely steady. I nodded. I'll finish it tomorrow. She turned to leave, but halfway to the door, she looked back, just like before. Only this time, she didn't smile. She just looked at me, searching, uncertain, almost sorry, and then walked out into the rain. And somehow, that look felt louder than any goodbye. It rained the whole evening, the kind that doesn't stop, just soft, steady, endless. The shop had closed hours ago, but she'd come by to pick up her car after work, and somehow, neither of us left. The rain made the world small. The lights hummed above us, reflecting off the puddles near the door. I offered her a cup of instant coffee, the only thing left in the old machine, and she laughed when it sputtered halfway. This place hasn't changed, she said, wrapping her hands around the warm paper cup. Even the coffee's still awful. It's the charm, I said, smiling. She leaned against the counter, her hair a little damp, the sleeves of her sweater pushed up. I noticed the fine veins in her wrist, a small scar near her thumb. Details I shouldn't have been looking at, but couldn't stop seeing. We talked for a while, about nothing mostly. Her work, my brother, the rain. But something in the rhythm of her voice kept drawing me in. There were pauses that didn't need to be there, looks that lasted a little too long before one of us blinked away. You ever think about leaving? She asked suddenly. This town, this routine. Sometimes, I said. But then I remember I don't have anywhere better to go. She gave a small smile, the kind that wasn't meant to comfort but to hide something. You're young. You will. And you? Her smile faded. I used to think so, she murmured. Thunder rolled in the distance. The lights flickered, dimmed, then steadied again. I could see her reflection in the window, her face lit by the pale yellow glow, eyes somewhere far beyond the glass. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't move to answer it. The name flashed once before the screen went dark again. I caught just enough to see it wasn't a stranger, her ex-husband. She noticed me noticing. Her fingers brushed the phone away, turning it face down. He still calls when he drinks, she said quietly. You could block him, I said. I could, she whispered. But that would make it real. That it's over. Something in her voice broke open a silence I didn't know we'd been keeping. I wanted to tell her that she didn't have to explain, that she didn't know anyone her stillness, but I didn't. Words felt too heavy in that moment. Instead, I just said, you don't sound like someone who's over it. She looked at me then, really looked, eyes searching, as if trying to read what I meant beneath the words. I don't know what I am, she said softly. We stood there, only a few feet apart, the sound of rain filling everything else. My hand rested near hers on the counter, close enough to feel the faint heat of her skin. For 1 second, she didn't pull away. Her breath caught, her gaze flickered down, and then the lights went out completely. Darkness. Her phone lit up again, breaking the spell. I should go, she said, her voice low, almost trembling. I nodded, though I couldn't see her face anymore. Only the sound of her footsteps retreating, then the door opening to the rain. The scent of her perfume lingered after she left, quiet, human, real. And I stood there in the dark, wondering how something that hadn't happened could feel so impossible to undo. The next morning, she showed up earlier than usual, too early for any normal reason. The air still smelled of wet pavement, the sky the color of metal. I was tightening a bolt on a half-finished engine when I heard her footsteps behind me. "You open this early now?" she asked. "Not really," I said, wiping my hands. "Couldn't sleep." She smiled faintly, then looked away. "Yeah," she whispered. "Me neither." It should have been small talk, but it wasn't. The words hung there, heavy, like both of us knew they weren't about the weather or work or anything we could name. She moved around the shop slowly, touching things without purpose, a wrench, a rag, the edge of the counter. Her movements were careful, measured, like she was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. Finally, she turned. "About last night." "There's nothing to talk about," I interrupted too fast. Her eyes lingered on me, steady, unblinking. "That's exactly why we should talk." I set the wrench down, hard enough to make a dull thud. "What do you want me to say?" "Anything that's true," she said. For once, the quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It pressed down on us, made the air feel too thick to breathe. She crossed her arms, not out of anger, but to hold herself together. "You look at me like I'm someone I'm not," she said softly. "And I." She stopped, her voice shaking slightly. "I don't know what that makes me." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I wasn't looking at her like that. I was just seeing her, maybe for the first time. The small cracks in her confidence. The way she kept pretending she didn't need anything from anyone. The way I wanted to fix something I had no right to touch. Instead, I said, "You think I don't know what this is?" She looked at me, searching, quiet, almost afraid. "Do you?" The question hung there like an exposed wire. I wanted to reach for her, to close the distance that had been building between us, but neither of us moved. Her voice lowered to almost a whisper. "We can't keep pretending this is just what?" She blinked, hard, like she wanted to swallow the words before they came out. "Nothing," she said. "It's nothing." But the tremor in her voice said otherwise. I stepped closer, not enough to touch her, just close enough that the space between us felt alive. "You don't sound like you believe that." Her eyes lifted to mine, glassy, exhausted. "That's the problem," she murmured. "I don't know what I believe anymore." The rain outside started again, soft, rhythmic, like the world wanted to give us cover for a truth we weren't ready to speak. She turned toward the door, then hesitated. "You're making this harder than it should be," she said. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because she said it like I had a choice. "Maybe it was always going to be hard," I said quietly. She stood there for a long second, her hand on the door handle, her back to me. Then, without turning around, she said the kind of line that doesn't sound like much until it stays with you for years. "I don't know what hurts more, that I came here to see you, or that I can't say why." And then she was gone. She didn't come around for a week. The shop felt different without her, quieter, flatter. I caught myself watching the door more than I worked, waiting for something I didn't name. When she finally did appear, it was a Monday afternoon, sunlight cutting through the dust like it didn't belong there. She didn't say hello, just walked in, holding a small envelope. "Your brother dropped this at my place," she said, setting it on the counter. "Said it was for you." Her tone was normal, too normal, but the way she lingered told me she wasn't here for the envelope. I opened it anyway. Inside was a photo, old, folded twice. It was me, maybe 6 or 7, standing beside my father. Behind us, someone had taken the picture mid-laughter. And just at the edge of the frame, blurred but unmistakable, was her. Younger, freer, her hand on my dad's shoulder. She saw the moment I realized. Her face didn't change much, just a quiet tightening around the mouth. "He took that the summer before he married your mother," she said softly. I stared at the photo again. "You knew him before all that?" Her nod was small, almost ashamed. "We worked together. For a while. He helped me through something." She looked past me, eyes fixed somewhere that wasn't here. "After my first marriage ended, I didn't have much. Your father, he listened. He was kind in a way that didn't ask for anything back." The words landed slow, heavy, like they'd been waiting years to be spoken. "I didn't know," I said quietly. You weren't supposed to, she said. It was a long time ago. She hesitated, tracing the edge of the counter with her finger. When I saw you again last year, after all this time, I didn't know what to do. You looked so much like him, not in the face, but in the way you stand still when you're thinking. I didn't know what to say to that. Something in my chest shifted, not anger, not confusion, something older. So that's why you've been, I started, but she shook her head. No, that's not all of it. Silence stretched between us, thin and dangerous. She looked at me then, eyes tired, voice breaking into something raw. I keep trying to separate who you are from what I remember. But every time I do, you say something or look at me a certain way, and it all comes back. Not him, you. And I don't know what that means anymore. The air between us was fragile. One breath too close, and it would shatter. I folded the photo, slowly, carefully. Maybe it doesn't have to mean anything, I said, though I didn't believe it. She gave a sad, crooked smile. That's what I told myself before, she said. And it still meant everything. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The hum of the light above filled the silence, steady and unkind. When she finally turned to leave, she paused by the door. Without looking back, she said, I thought I'd buried that part of myself. But you made me remember I'm still here. And then she was gone again, leaving only the folded photo on the counter and the quiet, dangerous truth that nothing between us was simple anymore. It was late when she came back. No warning this time, no reason. Just the sound of the doorbell cutting through the quiet hum of the night. The shop lights were off. I'd been sitting by the window, not really working. When I opened the door, she was standing there in her coat, eyes rimmed red from something she probably wouldn't admit. I couldn't sleep, she said. I didn't ask why. I just stepped aside and let her in. The rain hadn't come yet, but the smell of it was in the air, thick, electric. She walked to the middle of the room and stopped, looking around like she'd forgotten what she came for. Then she turned to me, voice low. Do you ever feel like you keep circling the same thing, even when you know you shouldn't? I nodded. Every day. That made her laugh, small, tired, honest. She took off her coat, folded it neatly over the counter. Her hands were shaking again. For a while, we didn't speak. She leaned against the workbench. I sat on the old stool across from her. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, just full. It felt like we'd already said everything that needed saying. Only now we were finally letting the truth exist in the air between us. I keep thinking I'll find the right words, she said quietly. But there aren't any. Maybe there don't have to be, I said. Her eyes lifted to mine, steady, unguarded. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't seem to be holding anything back. I tried to stay away, she said. I really did. I know. The clock ticked somewhere behind us, slow, even. Outside, the streetlight flickered, throwing soft orange light across her face. She looked older than she usually let herself appear, not because of age, but because she'd stopped hiding how much she felt. I don't want this to be a mistake, she whispered. It isn't, I said. Not if we know what it is. Her lips parted like she might argue, but then she exhaled, a slow, trembling breath that sounded almost like relief. She stepped closer, not fast, not with intention, just one small, careful move, then another, until her hand was resting on the table between us, fingers brushing the edge of my sleeve. The touch was barely there, a whisper of contact, but it felt like the whole room tilted around it. For a moment, neither of us moved. The world went still. No cars outside, no wind, just that fragile space where something real begins to exist. She looked down, her voice breaking into something so soft I almost didn't catch it. I don't know where this goes, she said. Me neither. Her hand turned over, palm open. I placed mine against it, careful, almost reverent, as if the slightest pressure could undo what we'd built. We stayed like that, sitting in silence, the rain finally starting outside. No promises, no future, just the quiet knowing that whatever this was, it had already happened, long before either of us said a word. And for the first time, that silence didn't feel wrong. It felt like the only truth we had left. It's been months since that night. The rain has come and gone 100 times since, and so has she. Not completely, just enough. Her car's fixed. She doesn't come by the shop anymore, not really. But sometimes, when I drive through her part of town, I'll see the faint glow of her kitchen light through the window. A shape moving behind the curtain. A sound of laughter that might be hers. And for some reason, that's enough. I used to think love was supposed to happen, like a storm or a fire. Loud. Obvious. Something you could point at and say, there. That's where it began. But this, whatever it was between us, it was quieter than that. It didn't arrive all at once. It seeped in slowly, through shared silences, through glances that lasted too long, through things we didn't say because saying them would make them real. I think we both knew what we were walking toward, even when we pretended not to. The truth is, nothing really changed that night. There was no confession, no promise. We didn't run away or stay together. But something in me, and maybe in her, unclenched. For the first time, I saw her not as my stepbrother's mother or some impossible line I wasn't supposed to cross, but as a woman, flawed, alive, and as lonely as I was. And maybe she saw me not as a boy orbiting other people's lives, but as someone capable of seeing her without the story around her. That was enough. Sometimes I think about her hands, how they trembled when she tried to hide it, how she laughed through it anyway, or the way she looked at me when words failed, when silence was the only thing left between us. It wasn't love, not in the way movies tell it. It wasn't right or wrong, either. It was something smaller and truer, two people finding something alive in themselves when they thought it was gone. I still work at the shop, still drink coffee that tastes like metal, still catch myself glancing at the door when the bell rings. But now, when it's not her, it doesn't ache the same way. It just feels like life, messy, unfinished, human. People like to talk about closure like it's something you find. I don't think you do. I think you just learn how to carry what stays. That's what she left me. Not regret, not longing, just a quiet understanding that love doesn't always fix you. Sometimes, it just reminds you that you were still capable of feeling. And maybe that's all any of us really need. If you've ever had someone walk into your life and change you, even just a little, tell me in the comments what you remember most. The words, the silence, or the moment you realized they were gone.